Number 5. So me and my friends, Mike and Steve, were all chilling at Steve's house late one night back in 2009. I remember specifically because we all went to go see the new Friday the 13th film earlier on that day. We all were just hanging out and listening to music and rocking out like the dorks that we are. My friend's parents were gone for the night, leaving the house all to ourselves. As the song slowly came to an end, we could still hear someone singing from outside. We look outside the window and see a man under a nearby streetlight that was in front of the house. He was singing and clapping his hands while staring back at us. His long hair was hanging down over his eyes. It was the most insane thing I've ever seen. The others just thought it was some drunk, crazy guy messing around with us, and there was nothing to be worried about. They returned to their rocking. After the next song ended, we heard even louder singing coming from outside again. We opened the blinds to the bedroom window and saw the man's face pressed directly against the window glass, singing with a smile on his deranged face. He looked absolutely dreadful, covered with old scars and a row of crooked, blackened, rotting teeth. We quickly closed the blinds, then one of my friends got out their cell phone and dialed 911. The cops came and the man was gone by the time they got there. The cops said that if he came back to call again. Me and my friends didn't think the creepy man would return after that. After the cops left, the house phone suddenly rang. When Steve picked it up, he froze in total fear, mouth hanging wide open. He said that he heard singing coming from the other end. He then slammed the phone down and called the cops again. They arrived quickly, and this time they found the man lurking around in the backyard. Apparently this man was insane and escaped out of a local mental institution. If you're wondering how he got Steve's home phone number, the house was for sale by owner at the time, and Steve's dad got the brilliant idea to display the house number on the for sale sign. Genius, right? The phone call was made from a stolen cell phone. None of us were in any immediate danger, but this situation was still nope as fuck. Number 4. This happened to me back in the summer of 2010. I remember specifically because I graduated high school that year. I graduated in May, and this incident took place about a month after. I was 18 years old. I told my parents that I was going to take a year off and do pretty much whatever I wanted to. I felt that I was entitled to make this decision, because I spent years in a monotonous government-ran institution being fed the bullshit about how great America is. Okay. It was around the end of June and the 4th of July was approaching, and I got the brilliant idea that I was going to spend the 4th with family I had in the state of Arkansas. I decided to make the 15-hour drive from where I lived in Florida to Little Rock. If you encounter a lot of traffic, it's more like 24 hours. This would be the first time I made a road trip by myself, but I was ready to get out of my home state and go on an adventure before I slipped into the slave-like routine of working at some shitty job 40 hours a week and paying rent and all that good stuff. I set off on my trip to Arkansas on July 1st, the day after my mother's birthday. For those of you who are curious, getting out of the state of Florida is literally half the journey. Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana are a cakewalk. Well, I can't recommend stopping in Alabama if you can help it, and you'll understand why soon enough. I finally crossed the Florida state line into Alabama, and at this point I was feeling very tired and drained. Driving non-stop for hours can really take it out of you. I got off at the nearest exit and made my way to the closest gas station I could find. I had about a half a tank, so I would take this opportunity to fuel up and purchase some energy drinks to give me a boost. And there was only one car parked there. I assumed that it belonged to an employee. I pulled up to the gas pump and made my way inside the gas station. Upon entering, I kinda got the vibe that the cashier wasn't having the best of nights. She looked to be about middle-aged, blonde hair, and had large bags under her eyes, like she hadn't slept in weeks. I greeted her with a friendly, "Hey, how's it going?" She just looked up from the magazine that she was reading briefly and stared at me blankly, and then went back to reading. Now, that is quality customer service. I was thinking to myself, well, that's rude, but I didn't have time to ponder about this. I needed to get back on the road. I went to the wall of coolers where they kept the canned beverages and grabbed 2 Rockstar energy drinks. I remember chuckling to myself when I saw the cans of Four Loko next to where they kept the drinks. Me and my friends have had a lot of good times with Four Lokos. I grabbed the drinks and then I felt my phone vibrate. It was an email notification. While I was checking my phone, I heard the main entrance door open, and I saw 2 very large, intimidating Caucasian men enter the store. Both of these guys were bald, and I could tell by the way they were talking that they had been drinking. One was shorter than the other. The short one looked like he was dressed to go clubbing or something. He had a black collared shirt on with some designer blue jeans. The taller one looked like he just got back from a construction site. They both had similar facial features, leading me to believe that they may have been brothers. Before I continue, I need to give a side note. I'm very timid looking and am extremely antisocial. I guess this is one of the reasons I have such a negative outlook on life. But nevertheless, every time someone who I don't know insults me or says some smart-ass remark about me, I have a tendency to take it to heart. And seeing how these guys were acting, I knew that if they noticed me, they would say something discouraging towards me. Now I know it sounds shallow, but I really don't like people giving me shit for absolutely no reason. So with this in mind, I just sort of hung out towards the back of the store. These 2 guys didn't look like they were interested in going back there to where I was. They went directly to the cashier. I figured that they were going to buy some cigarettes or tobacco dip and then leave. I heard these guys talking with the cashier, but I couldn't tell what they were saying, due to the country music coming from a nearby overhead speaker. What happened next made my jaw drop. The man in the collared shirt reached over the counter, grabbed the female cashier, and pulled her over with one arm, and slammed her to the ground. With his other hand, he reached behind him and pulled out a black handgun, and pointed it directly at her face. If you've ever seen a movie called Crank, there's a scene where Jason Statham pulls a convenience store worker from behind the counter in one swift movement and points a gun at his face. This was nearly identical to that. At that moment, I became scared for my life. I quietly crouched down from where I was standing, which was by a sunglasses rack, and then listened carefully to what transpired next. I heard the man who I assumed had the gun shout,
"You fucking bitch! Don't you disrespect me, you fucking whore! I'll kill you!"
I could hear the woman start to sob. Then I heard the man say,
"I bet you won't talk your shit now, will you, bitch?"
Then I heard the other guy speak up.
"If you kill this bitch, you know we're gonna have to kill anyone else who happens to drive up on this shit. There's a car parked at one of the pumps. If we fuck up again, we're gonna be locked away for a long time."
When I heard this, my stomach dropped. My mind began to race. I was thinking that if they were willing to kill anyone who drove up to this gas station, I could only imagine what they would do to me if they found out that I was hiding back here. To make things worse, the cashier counter was next to the only exit out of there. My heart began to beat rapidly. Thoughts of the man in the black collared shirt walking up to me and putting a bullet in my head invaded my mind. I shuddered to think that my end would be here, at this gas station, in the middle of bumfuck Egypt. My thoughts were interrupted by one of the men saying,
"Fuck it,"
followed by the sound of the main entry-exit door swinging open. I was still too scared to look up, but I did hear a car burning rubber as it peeled out of the parking lot. I gathered the courage to look up from my hiding spot and take a look around. I saw the still sobbing cashier quickly making her way towards the employee-only room, which was behind the counter. She slammed the door behind her, and I stared out the gas station windows to my left at the gas pumps and the front parking area. My Chevy Cavalier was still there, sitting at the gas pump. Thank goodness. But nothing else was in sight. I could hear the female cashier bawling her eyes out from the back room, so I took it upon myself to contact the police. I put the drinks I intended on purchasing back in the cooler, then I stepped outside the gas station and called the police. I just hung around my car waiting for them to show up. About 10 minutes later, 4 police cruisers pulled into the parking lot. I'll spare you the intricacies of law enforcement procedure when it comes to dealing with this sort of thing. Long story short, I gave my written statement, gave them a number where they could reach me at, and went back on my adventurous journey. Needless to say, I didn't get off at another exit for gas until a few hours had passed. I never heard any follow-up to this incident, nor have I come across any public information. As far as I know, the crazy Baldy brothers were never found. Number 3. As a young male, I never really understood people in my own age group. Is it really necessary to be an aggressive, disruptive asshole every waking moment of your life? Fucking jerks. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me set things up for you. I was a security guard at an RV lot in Florida. It's one of those resorts where the snowbirds flock to during the winter time. That basically means all the retired folks come down from up north and spend a good part of the winter season here in Florida. Anyways, working unarmed security, despite all the things you may have heard, is not always easy. You have to deal with very rude, insipid morons from time to time. And when that happens, the paperwork piles up. In my case, being a skinny pushover did not make my job any easier. Poor me. One of my scariest encounters with individuals who pretty much think they can get away with trespassing on private property and stealing shit occurred during the summer of 2013. This incident happened at about 2:45 a.m. It was a particularly hot summer night, and the resort was pretty much vacant except for a few residents, since it was the off-season. Now, just a quick side note. The resort that I worked at had only one point of entry and exit. The rest of the perimeter was fenced off, so basically, I would have to watch the resort entrance for about 30 minutes, then do a street patrol on my golf cart for about 30 minutes, and then go back to watching the entrance again. This cycle repeated itself for about 8 hours. Pretty simple. However, on this night, there was trouble coming my way. As I said before, it was about 2:45 a.m., when 3 suspicious Caucasian males, wearing baggy white t-shirts and lowrider shorts, emerged from the public road just outside the entrance, and then entered the resort. I immediately pointed my flashlight at them. I was instantly unnerved by the sight of red bandanas covering their faces. I aimed the beam of light directly at one of them and said, "Hey, this is private property. I'm going to have to ask you guys to leave." They didn't pay any attention to my presence, and they just kept advancing into the resort. I pulled out my golf cart onto the street from my parking spot, and again said, "Hey, you guys cannot be here. You're trespassing on private property." One of the Slim Shady clones turned to me and said,
"Go fuck yourself, pussy."
Well, at that moment I realized that these dudes were not interested in leaving, and that they were most likely here to ransack one of the unoccupied mobile home units. I watched as they walked down one of the resort streets and disappeared into the maze of RVs and mobile homes. I did not pursue them. These guys looked to be in their 20s, and even though they were wearing baggy clothes, I could tell that these guys were much bigger than I was. Plus, I was not armed, and I didn't know if these dudes were packing heat, and I'm not paid enough to be a hero. So I pulled out my cell phone and called the cops. While I was on the phone with the police, I nervously kept glancing around. As I stated earlier, there was only one exit to this place, and I was right next to it, because I didn't think driving around a resort playing cat and mouse with 3 physically superior males looking for trouble wasn't the best idea. They could be hiding anywhere in there, and even if I did confront them, it would be 3 on 1. But at the same time, it was unlikely that they would jump the fence because of the protective barbed wire above the fencing, so if they did decide to exit the resort, it would take them right past where I was. The police operator mentioned that they were looking for these guys. Apparently they had done something prior to entering my resort. The police operator instructed me to sit tight and the police would be arriving soon. After she got done telling me that, I saw the 3 thugs appear from behind a nearby unit. They started walking in my direction. I heard one of them say,
"I think this pussy just called the cops on us. Let's beat his ass before the pigs show up."
After that was said, the 3 started running full speed towards me. I took off down another resort street, hoping that they would just leave through the exit, but to my horror, I looked back and the 3 thugs were tailing my golf cart. The golf cart was pretty old and didn't go very fast, plus the battery wasn't to its full capacity since I was more than halfway through my shift. I fucking floored it. I could hear the 3 behind me shouting obscenities and threats. I feared for my life as I raced down the street. I didn't know what would happen if these 3 guys caught up with me. I was about to reach the end of the street and turn the corner when I saw the red and blue rays of light coming from behind me. I managed to look behind me one last time before cutting the corner. 3 police cruisers were coming down the road towards the 3 Slim Shadys and me. One of the intruders shouted,
"Oh shit!"
And then, like real gangsters, the 3 took off into an alley that was between 2 nearby units, located on the opposite side of the street from the corner I was about to turn into. I turned the corner and stopped my golf cart. My heart was about to pop out of my chest. Shortly after I stopped my cart, a police car emerged from the street that was parallel to where the chase took place. Keep in mind that this all went down in the middle of the property. The police officer pulled up next to me and asked if I was okay. I said I was, and then we heard what sounded like a shouting match between the thugs and the other cops that were in the resort. It sounded like it was coming from somewhere nearby. I also heard what sounded like someone being slammed against the hood of a car. I've never heard the word fuck being shouted out loud so many times. I later found out that these guys were wanted for arson. Before they paid me a visit that night, they torched 2 units to the ground at a neighboring resort, and they also set a car on fire while they were there as well. I consider myself very lucky to have come out of this situation without a scratch. If the cops hadn't shown up when they did, I probably would have been pulverized by the trio. I had the chance to testify against them in court, but I opted not to because they had more than enough charges against them to put them away for a very long time, even without my testimony. I'll never forget that night. Many of the residents thanked me for my actions, but honestly all I did was call the cops like anyone else would. But I did appreciate the brief admiration. So 3 Slim Shady clone gang members, let's not meet again. Number 2. This happened about a year ago. From 2013 to 2015, I worked night shift security at an RV resort. I was on my way to work one night when my front driver's side tire blew out on a long, narrow dirt road. It was around 10:30 p.m., so it was pretty dark. I live in a very secluded area in upstate Florida, and this road was not near any neighborhoods and only had a few streetlights. My shift started at 11, so I called the manager and told her that I might be a little late because I had to change the tire. After I got that squared away, I pulled out my car jack and started to position it underneath my Ranger. I was about to start cranking away when I saw the dim glow of some golf cart headlights approaching me from down the street in the direction I just came from. I was thinking it was probably a local wondering what was going on, and maybe they would be nice enough to give me a hand. The golf cart stopped behind my truck. I stood up from where I was crouching and said, "Hey there, one of my tires just blew out. You wouldn't mind giving me a hand, would you? I'm kinda running late for work." The person on the golf cart did not respond, and then I heard them getting out of the golf cart. The person came within the headlights of their own golf cart. The light was dim, so it was kind of hard to see, but he looked like a middle-aged man with no shirt on, so I could clearly see his beer gut. He also had hairy legs, and I could see that something was dangling under his massive stomach. Turns out, he was completely naked. That's something I could have lived my entire life without seeing. The man seemed to be holding something in his hands. I only caught a quick look at the object. All dick jokes aside, The thing that this guy was holding looked like a machete. The man didn't say a word as he started to slowly walk towards me. I quickly jumped back in my truck, started it up, and noped the fuck out of there. I didn't have time to grab my car jack, so I just left it behind. My truck was lopsided from the deflated tire, and it awkwardly accelerated forward. I could see in my interior mirror that the headlights of the golf cart were close behind me. Despite my truck having a flat tire, it was still going a decent speed, and so was the golf cart that was tailing me. So in a split-second decision, I slammed on the brakes of my Ranger, and not even a second later, I heard and felt the golf cart smash into my rear end. I rolled down my window and shouted, "Fuck you, creep!" I then sped off. I managed to get to work on time. Fucked up my rim pretty bad though. I explained everything to the manager, and the cops were called. They searched the road but found no signs of the guy or his golf cart. But they did find my car jack, which was returned to me. Other than a few minor dents, the back of my truck didn't look bad at all. I'm sure that golf cart had it 10 times worse. He had to be going full speed when he crashed into me. Honestly, I'm surprised he was even able to drive away after that. I've come to the conclusion that this weirdo was on a serious meth high. I no longer own that truck or work at that site anymore. So creepy, bare-ass, overweight, machete-wielding psychopath? For the love of God, put on some fucking pants. Number 1. So I just got back from the store, and I gotta share this experience I just had with you guys. It may not seem as scary as some of the other encounters posted to this subreddit, but it still gives me the chills. Let me start off by saying that this morning I wasn't in the best of moods. I had to work graveyard shift last night, and I woke up after only 4 hours of sleep with my back killing me. I couldn't get back to sleep, so I decided that I would go run a few errands since I was now wide awake. I needed to get a haircut while I was out as well. My sister works at a salon that is right next to a Target, so after I got my sister to mow my scalp, for free by the way, I popped over to Target intending to grab a few things before heading home. So I was pushing my cart down the frozen food section, and I turned the corner to go into the next aisle. When I did, there was a middle-aged lady that was pushing her cart in the opposite direction. I nearly bumped into her but stopped before our carts collided. She gave me a mean look and said in a real bitchy tone, "Excuse me." Now again, I have to say that I wasn't in the best of moods, and I'm a short-tempered person as it is, so without thinking I shot back at her and said, "Shut up, you're fine." Call me an asshole if you want, no one's perfect. But what happened next was just pure insanity. The lady then suddenly left her shopping cart and started to follow me. I noticed this about halfway down the aisle, and I turned around to see what her problem was. And then, I shit you not, she rolled her eyes back into her head, pointed at me, and screamed very loudly. When I say screamed, I mean she was shrieking at the top of her lungs. It was like something out of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I hurried down the aisle to get away from this insane person, but she started running after me, still pointing at me. Needless to say, all the bystanders immediately stopped what they were doing and stared at us. The lady kept screaming like a banshee at the top of her lungs while she chased me around the store. Well, I got the fuck out of there. I didn't feel like explaining the situation to an employee, and I couldn't stand hearing that ear-piercing screaming a second longer. I ran out of the exit of the store, looked back as I headed for my car. The lady was standing just outside the now opened automated sliding doors, but she was still inside the store if that makes sense. While she stood there, her mouth was hanging wide open, and she was still pointing at me with her eyes still rolled back into her head. All you could see was the whites of her eyes. She suddenly turned around and briskly walked back into the store. I decided to pick up my stuff at Walmart just down the street instead. All I could think the entire drive home was, what the fuck was that? Creepy, screaming, possessed banshee lady? Perhaps I shouldn't have been so rude, but you still have more than one screw loose in your noggin.
Yes, 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 yes.
Hey guys, Unit 522 here, and I want to thank you very much for watching my video. I would appreciate it very much if you would share, like, and comment. And if you're new to this channel, become one with the Unity by hitting the subscribe button. If you have a scary story or experience that you want featured on this channel, you can always send it to my email or post it on the Free Horror Stories subreddit. The links for those can be found in the description below. If you would like to help out this channel even more, consider a PayPal donation. And for more updates, be sure to follow me on Twitter. There's nothing wrong with a little darkness in your life, as long as you never forget, there's always a reason to be afraid.